Hi everyone, RFG here with a review for Hauntii, available on PC, PlayStation, Switch, and Xbox, developed by Moonloop Games and published by Firestoke. Hauntii is an isometric twin-stick puzzle and exploration game that uses its central mechanic of haunting objects and creatures that switch into a number of different gameplay styles. The game begins with Hauntii awakening as a new ghost, seeking answers to their previous life. When you have control, you go through a rather short tutorial section that teaches you about Hauntii's basic movement with the left stick, dashing, and your essence, or attack using the right stick on your controller. Proceed further, and you'll be given a brief overview of how to haunt objects. Basically, using essence with the right stick when controlling Hauntii functions either as an attack or the means to haunt objects and other creatures. You'll be using Hauntii's abilities and the abilities of what's being haunted to make your way through the game. After moving on through a few more areas, you'll eventually learn that darkness is not your friend. Although Hauntii is largely a puzzle and exploration game, Hauntii does have health, dashes have cooldown, and essence is gauged by a meter that needs to recharge when being used. Getting hit by enemies or staying too long in dark areas of a map will cause you to take damage. Once you're saved by your new friend from being swallowed by your first encounter with the darkness, and after a brief disaster situation, you'll crash land into the meat of the game. At this point, you're introduced to ghost flames. This is currency for being able to use abilities when haunting objects and creatures. They're pretty abundant, and if you do feel like you're running low, you can usually leave an area and return immediately for a refill. You've probably noticed that I've been collecting a lot of these white triangle things. They're also a form of currency to buy items from shops like cosmetic hats, but more importantly, when you lose all of your health, you'll spend this currency to revive at a checkpoint, much like in Mario Odyssey. Going further, you'll be introduced to your first star. Stars are your way of progressing through the game and function similarly in the same way as stars, shines, or moons do in the 3D Mario games. Hauntii shares a lot of similarities with the 3D Mario games, including that the ways to collect stars is plenty varied. Even early on, you'll see quite a variety of ways to collect stars. You'll find them in hidden objects using essence, by collecting crescent moon pieces, finishing races by using your dash, possessing creatures to reach them, defeating enemy waves similar to twin-stick shooters, unconventional boss fights, and more. You'll be using Hauntii's basic abilities and abilities of possessed objects and creatures in a variety of ways. Even though progression through the game is similar to the 3D Marios, you'll find that progression isn't tied to just collecting stars. Instead, you'll see that there are certain points that are blocked off by a symbol. When you see these blocked points, there's usually a shrine nearby, and with these shrines, you'll spend stars to complete constellations. Completing the constellation that matches the symbol on the point of progression allows you to move to the next area and gives you a piece to upgrade your total health, dash, or essence. Before you get that far, you'll receive a map. Opening the map should give you a general idea of how the world of Hauntii is divided up. The world is essentially split up into individual level hubs, and these hub levels are connected by a general theme depending on how far you are into the game. Each theme also has its own set of currency that can be used at their level-themed shops. Much like Mario 64, these hub levels contain stars, and most importantly, you'll see the number of stars available and collected per each level you've visited. If you're ever short on stars, you can use the map to see if there are stars missing that you can collect, and any pathways you might have missed. Realistically, you shouldn't have any trouble collecting enough stars to naturally progress through the game, and there was never a point where I wasn't able to move on when reaching these points. I mentioned that stars are pretty varied on how they're acquired, and by the end of your first themed set of levels, and if you're like me where you try to find every star in each level before moving on, you might end up thinking that the variety is probably wearing thin. Fortunately, you'd be wrong. Hauntii keeps providing you with new ways to find stars, and makes use of your base abilities and the abilities you can use when something is haunted. You'll still come across relatively simple stores, but also ones that are part of more elaborate designs. The story is light and enjoyable. It has a strong sense of humor, but the underlying themes project a larger meaning overall, and you'll see this when completing constellations as they present a quick, short, simply animated cutscene that feels like there's a strong emotional attachment involved. Keep in mind that cutscenes are unskippable. That's not really a big issue, but I was making this video during a second playthrough. By the way, the game looks great. The hand-drawn art style might look simple for character designs, but there's a lot of thought and detail in the environments and backgrounds, the way it's animated, and the limited use of colors, yet having each theme set of levels with an overall hue gives distinct individuality to the subset of levels for each theme. I did, however, notice some VSync and frame rate issues, but they were relatively minor and only noticeable in a few specific situations. The characters, although limited in interaction, show a lot of personality in either dialogue or actions. You'll be in company of your angel/Eternian companion for most of your journey, but you'll meet a surprising amount of other characters along the way, whether they're friends or foes. The music overall was fantastic. Each of the overall level themes fit the areas really well. The earlier areas have a more lighthearted feel, and the later areas have more of a bleak atmosphere, but occasionally gives you that sense of adventure. Nothing really feels out of place. Sounds that indicate the state of your character are also very clear. Staying too long in the dark causes all sounds to fade, and when essence is empty, the sound changes to let you know. The game lasts a good number of hours. I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm sure I reached double digits on my first playthrough, while trying to explore as much as possible. Collecting all stars, themed currency, and hats can extend that by a couple of hours, depending on how much you want to explore on your own. Despite all my praise, I actually find it kind of difficult on who I could recommend Hauntii to. Personally, I think that the game has a lot of charm that a lot of games currently lack, but its variation on gameplay is a bit scattered to recommend to any particular genre fan. I made a lot of references to the 3D Mario games, but Hauntii's not mainly a platformer, and many platforming elements are pretty light. Even the haunting ability, although similar to Mario Odyssey, doesn't have quite the same feel as using Cappy does. And while the game has twinstick controls, it doesn't really fall into genres that are typically associated with using them. And though the puzzle tag overall makes sense, a lot of the puzzles don't really feel like puzzles. Though in my honest opinion, I think the game was wonderful to play. Some of the stars might become frustrating to find, some areas might get annoying, and a small set of visual flaws didn't take away from my overall enjoyment. So many games are following formulas and trends, and Hauntii is providing a unique experience. If you're getting even a bit burnt out from the huge amount of games that are following common trends and formulas but with a different coat of paint, then I strongly recommend Hauntii for a breath of fresh air. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you. Bye.